Welcome back to Tazeen TV and Chidiogo. I'm so delighted that you are joining us today. For those not familiar, this is the beautiful Chidiogo, writer and founder of She Roars, supporting women around the world to connect to the power of their roar. I get goosebumps and excitement when I say that, Chidiogo, in a year which has been intense, incredible, through so much intensity. Intensity feels like the word, the most intense year, I would say, in many, many different ways, but also an incredible year of healing. So give me your thoughts. How has 2020 fared for you and your community of women?
2020 is that year. First of all, perhaps just want to thank you for having me, Tazeen. You know, we met in this year in a circle of women, and here we are again. And I think in many ways, this is the flip side of this cloud, the heaviness of the cloud, to the extent that there has been a pandemic this year and there's been so much happening. But on the flip side, there seems like there's an emergence of a lot of spaces that did not exist before. I've most certainly experienced this with the people I've connected with this year, and the ways that we've been able to connect from the comforts of our homes, or but connected around the world, so to say. And I believe that's in many ways the core of 2020 for me, this interconnectedness of our shared humanity. The word that encapsulates that is Ubuntu, right? And this year, Ubuntu took on an even bigger word, or meaning, I should say, because within our interconnectedness, there's the fears that came to the surface, right? And we all carry fears, and to feel each other and to see the ways that we're all connected in our fears and our struggles, however different, but ultimately very present for so many, in the pains that hadn't been healed, generations that perhaps can be captured by Black Lives Matters movements, and really the different marginalized communities, including women, really connecting deeply, not just to their pain, but to their power, and to the sense that this does not serve us to continue to not uphold all our communities, all people, especially in a world that there's just enough already in terms of the difficulties and the challenges, without those that are imposed subjectively, you could say, so, or arbitrarily. There's just no reason to keep so many down when there's such an abundance in terms of the potential of working together and supporting each other in that spirit of Ubuntu. So to your question, 2020 has been a year of seeing our shadows, our fears, our pain, the healing that wants to happen, and seeing the potential when we look all of this in the eye and breathe into the desire for something different, where everyone is supported in the spirit of Ubuntu and brotherhood and sisterhood, knowing that we can't do this alone, we need each other. And my hope is that moving forward, we can leverage these beautiful spaces and connections and healing that have happened on individual and collective community level to support this bigger healing that is needed on so many levels right now. To usher in a world that can be a little bit more supportive of people and the environment.
So beautiful. And I think I hadn't actually heard that word, and I love it when you say it, and I want to just sit with it even more. Ubuntu. I mean, tell me more. Take me into the inner meanings of Ubuntu?
That word came to me as well. It was in 2012. And I was to do a graduation speech and looking for like an angle, and it came, and it's been with me ever since. And it's Ubuntu. I'll say that again. Ubuntu. And they're words that have vibration. This is I want to say African word, but in truth it's from the Southern Africa region, the Bantu language, and it means many different things. There are different translations. At the core is I am because we are. And the we is not just you and I, it's that interconnectedness, right? I was just learning yesterday how leaves from a tree fall into the water, and that produces plankton, which feeds the fish. So without the trees, everything is connected. That's the law of nature. The seasons, the acorn falling just at the right time for the squirrel, the leaves and the seedlings, and it could go on and on. It's the law of nature. We're not separate. So Ubuntu acknowledges that not just with the environment, but with each other. Our meeting sparks something into the world. Our connecting here and sharing like this sparks something. We might never know what that is. And so it goes. Every action, every word, every thought contributes to this Ubuntu. So that's how I see it. It's that moment we acknowledge that we are part of a greater whole and we matter, right? You're such an important part of the whole. And I think the more aware we can be of that magic, or the what that means, to be alive and to be Ubuntu, for one another, for the environment, for this lifetime and the lives to come. I think that we can, it means also step into your own power. Maybe the daily question of how can I live today in a way that can bless this day, can bless myself, can bless another. And we all know that could be as little as a smile, right? And it could be as big as sharing love. But at the core, it's just knowing that we are not separate from the whole, and that we're held by the whole, and that we can truly be very conscious of our contributions. Ubuntu, I am because we are.
So, so beautiful. I was just reflecting on what you've just shared, and quite a few things are coming to heart. There's a prayer actually from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and starts with, we have awakened and all of creation has awakened for God, sustainer of all the worlds. God, I ask you for the best the day has to offer, opening support, light, blessings, guidance. And I seek refuge in you from any harm in it and any harm that may come or might come after it. I mean, what you've shared seems so simple. And on one level, it really is. And yet on the other level, and it's interesting you talk about this, I am because we are, in this very polarized year, right? This year where we've had to go into our little microcosms of existence, just these very, here in the UK, we've got tier 2, tier 3, and it's all about stay in your bubble. So stay within your sort of isolated little pockets of this little micro worlds that you're in. And yet the outpouring of community spirit, the wanting to kind of serve each other, builds this whole camaraderie of togetherness, even though we feel so separated. And I've actually found this year has kind of almost redefined that relationship to God, in knowing that full dependence and reliance is only on that one source. and all of our connectedness is through the energy and blessing and grace that flows with that one source. Tell me more about how you've experienced this, the polarization, and also the layers of the dust. We call it the rust that needs polishing, because often they do have to be looked at full on before you can clear. And I love how you talk about nature, because we're seeing it right now. We've just had this beautiful autumn, everything shedding away, and now the saps are retreating in the trees and everything's kind of going within. And we know that there will be that other spring, but is the time to be still, outside and within.
It's really beautiful to hear you weave as you have. I felt goosebumps when you talked about that stillness. And, perhaps we'll start with what that means. And I think my mind goes to how still there's an invitation to stillness on a daily basis. And you mentioned the prayer from the prophet, and what came to my mind was this invitation every day to find that space of stillness, to almost breathe into your day that which you're desiring. Before we got into this interview, you invited us to sit still and breathe, and perhaps be intentional about what it is that we're hoping for this conversation to be, right? So there's just such a beauty and simplicity in just being still. And the season forces us to remember that. But in truth, our cycles are daily almost, right? Especially that of the woman. We're we're invited to be very conscious of the cycle, because we cycle with the moon, and you have all these cycles around us really guiding us to the power of cycles. And within that, always this, that be it the new moon or the full moon, or, there's something about, or spring and summer and winter, like the edges of the spectrum, right? So what is your edge of the spectrum in terms of stillness, and the other side, being fully alive, right? And always calibrate that in your day, I find to be such a beautiful way to live. And this now takes us to that polarization, right? Because polar opposites are part of life. And I think when we're passive in the polarization, that's when it gets destructive, right? So I think there's been a lot of passive living as a whole, where we just, we're all in that, we're all rushing and going and doing, and we all know that. And it didn't quite feel right, but it was the game, so to say. It was the design, and we're swept up in that rush, because that's the kind of creatures we are. We get swept up, and, we're just doing. And I see the polarization as the truth that it just was not in balance the way we were living. So that's the first the polarization, just the first, it's being out of balance. So instead of sort of that ebb and flow, right, the quiet and the full power, we're just sort of full power, breakdown, little rest, full power, so it's like,